Chapter 2 The Crumbling Empire, Part 1. The early morning sun painted the city in muted tones, but the serene facade was shattered by the chaos erupting within. Sirens wailed through the streets, their piercing cries slicing through the calm like a scalpel. Unmarked vans screeched to a halt outside sprawling mansions, their doors flung open to release armed officers, who moved with precision and purpose. Across the city, a carefully coordinated sting operation was underway, and nothing would remain untouched. Detective Helen Radcliffe stood at the edge of one such scene, her sharp eyes concealed behind dark sunglasses. She exuded an air of calm authority, her tailored suit unruffled despite the frenetic activity around her. Officers swarmed a stately mansion, battering down doors and shouting orders. Inside, the echoes of panic ricocheted off marble walls as the last vestiges of power slipped through trembling hands. "Suspect secured," a junior officer reported, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and nerves. "Liam O'Sullivan's in custody." Radcliffe nodded, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Ensure every inch of that place is searched. No loose ends." The officer hesitated, glancing at the mansion's imposing facade. "And the wife?" Radcliffe's gaze hardened. "Bring her in. They're all part of this." As the officer moved to relay her orders, Radcliffe turned her attention to a nearby news crew setting up their cameras. This was her moment, the culmination of years of painstaking work. She could already see the headlines. Detective Radcliffe brings down mafia empire. Anna's perspective. Anna Petrov sat frozen in her parlor, her fingers clutching the remote as the live news feed played on the television. The footage showed officers swarming her estate, the polished gates that had once symbolized invincibility, now a crumpled heap. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her face remained stoic. She had trained herself for this, to never show weakness, even when the world was falling apart. Lucia entered the room, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Madam, the police are outside. They haven't entered yet, but—" Anna's voice was calm, almost cold. "Stay where you are. Do not speak to anyone unless I instruct you." She rose from her seat, smoothing the fabric of her dress with meticulous precision. Her mind raced, even as her movements remained measured. Grabbing her phone, she sent a single text to the group chat she had created for emergencies. "Stay quiet. Destroy everything." Setting the phone aside, she turned to Lucia. "You know what to do if they come inside." Lucia's trembling hands betrayed her, but she nodded. "Yes, madam." Satisfied, Anna moved to her study. Her husband's warnings had been cryptic but clear. Be ready for anything. She opened the hidden safe behind a bookshelf, retrieving a folder of documents she had prepared weeks ago. Each piece of paper represented leverage, a shield against the inevitable storm. But as she glanced at the television, showing Michael Russo being dragged from his home in handcuffs, she wondered if even that would be enough. Maria's perspective. Maria Gonzalez's morning routine was interrupted by the urgent buzz of her phone. She grabbed it from her bedside table, her stomach sinking as she read Anna's message. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response. "Understood, be safe." Through the window, she could see the flashing lights of police vehicles reflected against the walls of her bedroom. Rising quickly, she crossed to her closet and pulled out a fireproof box. Inside were cash, documents, and a few carefully chosen mementos, her survival kit, prepared for this exact scenario. "Mom?" Roberto's groggy voice called from the hallway. Maria turned to see her son standing in the doorway, his hair disheveled and eyes bleary with sleep. Forcing a smile, she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll be fine, mijo, but I need you to listen to me very carefully." She led him to his room, instructing him to pack a small bag with essentials. As he moved to comply, she returned to her office, her sharp mind already crafting contingency plans. She would not allow anyone, not the police, not the media, not even her husband's enemies, to endanger her son. Sophia's perspective. Sophia Russo stood frozen in her studio, her eyes fixed on the television screen. The vibrant hues of her half-finished painting seemed garish and out of place against the grim scenes unfolding on the news. Her husband Michael's face flashed across the screen, his usually composed expression twisted with fury, as officers dragged him away in handcuffs. A sharp knock at the door jolted her from her paralysis. She hesitated, her pulse racing, before cautiously approaching the door. Through the peephole she saw 2 uniformed officers. "Mrs. Russo," one of them called, his tone firm but not unkind. "We need to ask you some questions." Sophia's grip on the doorknob tightened. She glanced over her shoulder at the scattered letters and photographs on her desk. Evidence of Michael's dealings, fragments of a life she had tried to ignore. With trembling hands, she swept them into a drawer and composed herself before opening the door. "Of course, officers," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "How can I help you?" Laura's perspective. Laura Williams sat in her car, parked a block away from the chaos engulfing one of the mafia's warehouses. She watched through binoculars as agents swarmed the building, her chest tightening with conflicting emotions. On one hand, her mission as an undercover agent was nearing its goal. On the other, she couldn't ignore the pang of guilt as she thought of the women she'd grown close to over the past year. Her phone buzzed with a message from her handler. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare for extraction." Laura sighed, running a hand through her hair. She couldn't leave yet, not when the lives of the wives were on the brink of collapse. She had to make sure they had a fighting chance, even if it meant jeopardizing her cover. Reaching into her glove compartment, she pulled out a small recording device and pressed play. The faint sound of Michael Russo's voice filled the car, incriminating and damning. Laura's lips tightened. She would hold on to this for now. There were bigger pieces to move on the board before she made her final play. The day unravels. The raids continued throughout the day, each operation meticulously planned and executed. By sunset, the city's criminal underworld was in tatters. The evening news declared it the largest mafia takedown in decades, complete with footage of handcuffed men being loaded into vans and evidence being hauled out in crates. But for Anna, Maria, Sophia and Laura, the nightmare was just beginning. As the city celebrated the fall of the empire, they were left to grapple with a singular, haunting truth. Their lives would never be the same again.